Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the basics of philosophy. And today's topic we're going to be discussing about is metaphysics. And according to Wikipedia, metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that studies the fundamentals, natures of reality, the first principles of being, identify, and change space and time, casually, necessarily, and possibility. Okay, so we're going to go into space for a minute. So as you can see in these images, we can see that there are countless of stars, and then we have the galaxy. Okay, so what is my thoughts on metaphysics? What is the principle of it? The way I see it is that the universe, it is designed by our living nature. How do I say that? Because every universe has a lot of forms that things had basically create things by force, by necessary, because it is designed to apply every universal laws that it has to be in order, every step of every category throughout the timeline. So when I think about the Big Bang, what is my big theory on the Big Bang? The thing about the Big Bang is that the things that explodes, and they say, well, the Big Bang is part of our universe, is part of our first creation, at the time that maybe we were never born yet. But the Big Bang, it is a principal manner that if we go back over millions of years ago, that back in time that there were like no universe, there were no stars, there was no galaxies at the time. But in the outer space world, it takes millions of, or even billions of years until they apply these calculations to form things that needs to go out, because gravity has force, and every force is what it moves in different directions. So as far as the Big Bang is concerned, yes, the way I see it, that the Big Bang, they do have a limited actions that they take place, and the one thing they have to apply is universal laws. And when I say about universal laws, I'm referring to what does the universe has to apply of what it's going to create right now. Like these atoms, for example, that these atoms, they're using as circulations, that it moves from one direction to the next. And then we have a cloud of dust where it circulates back and forth. And then we have a brand new galaxy. Why? Because it's an automatic force that it is starting to eliminate. Now, so if I look at the images right now, I see the galaxy. Yes, galaxy is a physical object, but there's going to be a lot of different systems and different planets that maybe it's not just the solar system. It could be other planets outside of the outer space world that maybe we might not know. It could be some different objects that maybe we can study too. But there's a lot of different galaxies and even different stars throughout the universe that if you imagine if you're looking through a telescope, you can imagine how many stars, how they're using to use good lights. That, the light is where that it pawns around the sky. And stars, yes, stars has limitations, the way it can use it. Sometimes it can take years until we reach to the stars, or if we reach to the galaxies. And yes, there could be a way that we could, some studies that they can form. So even our Milky Way, yes, the Milky Way is our galaxy. This is what our creation was been made by the Big Bang. And, there's other times where if I think about going in outer space, I think about what does our universe has to apply the way that we're living right now. Because there might be other times where I can see right away that there's other different accountabilities where they have to use these subjects of where they're going from. They could be going out somewhere in the outer space, or they could be somewhere in a different galaxy, or a different forms that, or actually maybe different particles that it could go from every one place or direction. But in the outside universe, this is where every different there are creations that it will be made, and it will turn out to be some more realities somewhere that maybe we can expose to. But in the meantime, the way I want to reflect about the universe in generally is, if we can live to what we are staged in, there could be billions of years that we might not know some other things that we might see anywhere in our history. But as of what we have right now, we do have all the resources to apply to every universe that has forms, every transactions that keep us going. And when I say keep us going, is to study the basics, the history of the universe, of how things were created, and by looking through different images of galaxies and stars. Yes, there's so many things that they're out there in the outer space world. There's plenty of them. There's many of them. In fact, if we go like in a rocket ship, it can take us years until, like I said, reach for the stars, reach for the galaxies. There might be some other galaxies out there that we might not know what they look like, because if there might be some other different planets or different moons that we might not know, but at least the Milky Way and our solar system has the resources to study these ways of how they're going to use to create these things. Also, there's one thing I want to mention about is the Big Bang theory. That the Big Bang, also not the Big Bang, the black hole, for instance. Yeah, that's the black hole. That's what I want to get into. The black hole, it became very, very mysterious because it's a very fundamental object of how the black hole that it was been made. Now, there's been physics that they have studied these resources about, that the black hole is where basically it shrinks all the way down, and it basically shrinks. It's very, very down slightly. And sometimes I ask myself, does the Big Bang trying to erase the universe? Or does the Big Bang try to erase something that once we go inside the black hole, are there just going to be some other, any fundamental particles or any other objects or maybe other stuff that maybe we might not know about? Because the whole thing is covered in black. It's an unknown black hole information that, maybe we not know where it comes from. Let's say if something comes and shrinks all the way down, we're not too sure whether it's going to come back up, or if it's not, it could basically be gone forever, and we might not know. Just think, if we go into that black hole right now, it's going to be plain dark. We will never know what the black hole is, what inside the black hole, and what type of force that it starts to go. Sometimes it can really spin really, really quickly, and then it shrinks all the way down the bottom. Imagine something could be flat, but then later physics has shown that there is a limitation where it pulls to the ground, because the black hole is where it slides down, so it shrinks to the bottom. So once it goes there, we might not know where it's going to come from, because even though the black hole is very, very mysterious, we might not exactly know if there's going to be something, other existence in there in the black hole that we might not know about. But to my own theory, do I think this is my theory about the black hole, is that if it starts to erase the history, will it come back? You see, and that's where I kind of question about if it's going to come back or not. And if it does, by chance of miracle, it would be amazing. But if it's not, it's just going to basically erase another history. Well, not a history, but erasing another galaxy or universe itself. And it could probably take years, or maybe it'll just basically erase right away and maybe it'll never come back. But eventually, yes, like I mentioned before, that there are universal forms that they're going to do things automatically by force, by necessary, because they do things very automatically, and they're going to apply these physicals objects of what they're going to go to. Because as it's a very physical movements, that it basically moves in every different directions, because that's how they move things. It's almost as they're trying to cooperate or trying to put the works that they can and try to create something that it will be existing. So yeah, the thing about the whole universe itself and the space in general, this is where, like, when we look at these images right now, we can picture as, yeah, this is what we think. Yes, there are different objects that we establish, something that we see things. Because the stars has bright light in the outer space. And there could be other galaxies in the outer space world. And as far as the galaxy is concerned, yes, galaxy is a brand new creation. How it got created? The Big Bang. Big Bang is part of our universal history that has been formed. And this is where it come out time and time again of what we see things. Okay, so now we talked about space. Now we're going to get into the time. So what is my thoughts on the time? I like to use the word time expansion. That if we go in the previous history, something that is happening in the past, like from the geological time scale, for instance, that, why does the geological time scale got started? What does it happen? Why was the Earth got so popular back then? How did it get all started? Well, the first thing is that they were rocks that they were smashing into pieces. Even meteorites has fallen to the ground, and even volcanoes start to burst to ash. And then later, a brand new weather in the atmosphere that start to cool down into the system. Then underneath the oceans, we have the trilobites, which, by the way, the trilobites has really interesting, delicate creatures that they have collected fossil remains in different characteristics of the way they have collected throughout the years. Sometimes they go out and hunt and start looking for fossils, and they use that for their own collection as a treasure. Okay? And then later, they had the dinosaurs, like we have the T-Rex. We have all these dinosaurs that they were big and small. And then what they do is that they go out and start hunting for their own survivals by killing and eating and surviving their own nature. Then later, this big asteroid came to Earth and is smashed down to the ground in the Earth's crust. And then later, it killed all the dinosaurs. And it's not the fact that even though they do have claws, but they could not bury themselves in the dirt and try to bury themselves so they can stay alive. But that's not their behaviorism to do it. It's not a physical behaviors for them to do it. They don't think that way like human does, but they have different ways of how they survive from this. All they can do is just hunt, eat, and survive, and to run. That's all they can do. And that's how they try to defend themselves. And then later we have the mammals. That the mammals, we have the mammoths, you have the monkeys, you have the lions, and you have these interesting creatures that they go out and hunt and explore. And then after that we have the early humans that they, same thing, they go hunt, killing animals. They have to live in a cave so they can use bonfire. And back then they used to have cave arts. That these cave arts were very interesting back then because they were around from 30 or 20,000 BC at the time. And sometimes they couldn't speak regular English. All they can do is speak other different languages that other early humans they had to speak to communicate to each other. Okay, so the way I use an example, that is called time. We're talking about of what happened in the past, or I'll give you another example. We talked about the space not too long ago. Let's say if that space rocket goes into the moon, it depends how long it takes for them. It can take 24 hours, or let's say if it takes about 3 to 5 days until it reaches the moon. Then finally, when the time ends, now they reach the moon. They've landed the moon. Now they land very safely. So it's a time capsule of where it's going to go to the moon. So, and yeah, and that's how it's a composition, the way it works when we discuss about the past or some type of previous history that has been going around for years. Okay, I'll give you another example. Back in September 11, 2001, there was two World Trade Centers that they got destroyed and they collapsed to the ground. Why? There were two airplanes that crashed into the World Trade Center. How did it all got started? It's because they were the Talibans. They were the terrorist leaders not terrorist leaders. Al-Qaeda, yes. Al-Qaeda was the terrorist leaders who started the 9/11 attack and crashed into the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and also in Pennsylvania. So that's how these terrorist leaders came to the United States, and that's why they call it terrorists. And then that's when they end up discussing these political theories and also, actually conspiracy theories about 9/11, blaming George Bush because he's ones that started the 9/11. But even though I don't find that very relevant, but I honestly do believe that Al-Qaeda was the terrorist leaders they started it. It has nothing to do with President George W. Bush. He's not the one who's responsible for it. People might say he is. But on top of that, this is where the history starts to form. And that's why our time capsule, that's where it starts to lead. And that could lead from 365 days a year and 12 months of a time. So, and the whole thing, like the way I think about time is that even though the clock will start to keep going and on and on and on. Even though we cannot change the past, we can change different time clocks throughout the system, but it's going to move forward for the future. That is where it basically takes place. And let's say if we do go back in the past, it will take us years to develop every step of timeline history of where these events take place. And it can take us years until we actually develop some other activity forms that it will start to create an event. So yeah, the whole thing about that we discussed so far about space and time, this is where, you see, that's how I find two interesting things about space and time. That, we mentioned about the space is part of our universe. Our universe is what we are sacrificed to be part of in this nature world. And then we have the time. It's a time capsule that discusses about what happened to what happened to the histories or the past. Or as an example, I remember 3 years ago that I used to be on the basketball team, that we won 3 championships awards. So I remember back in the time that we won a championship awards. Or I remember at the time when I was very little, when I went to elementary school, we would pretend that we were choo-choo trains, that I was the engineer and one of my friends that they were the coaches. And you see, that's how we can remember things. Remember at the time, in the previous past, something that reflects of what happened with our lives or the events or any other previous history that we experienced or expose something that we see in the world. So that's why our time capsule is what needs to go on. It cannot stop, but it has to move forward. Just like when you look at your time clock, your clock is going to keep ticking and ticking, moving forward from this. And it will basically go on and on and on. It will not stop, but it has to push forward. We cannot change the clock from yesterday or 2 weeks ago or last month. You cannot change the dates that we are. We cannot go back from October 15th, the 14th, or even the 13th of this year. You know, we're going to have to go furthermore in the future. And, you know, that's how things are going to take place in these systems. And not only that, our time capsule will start to keep going on and on. So, you know, my philosophy on time is, even though our time capsule will always continue to go on, but our history is where the time comes that we explore every resource's developments and many different ways how our time can actually reflect from our history or even our family history. Something that we remember at the time or something that we expose to something at the time that many different worlds that has been created, and how our planet Earth was made. Yes, our Earth is alive, but as far as climate change, it's going to keep going. It's going to basically keep timing again, timing and timing. And they're going to keep using these transaction forms to keep going to our lives. Everything is going to keep up. There's going to be some new technology that we're going to see to, that there are going to be some new software development, new mobile phones, new databases that it's going to use in our future presences. But in the meanwhile, we cannot forget that our time capsule will always keep going in many different forms that we see. All right. Well, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you next time. See you later.